On October 30th, 1938, the planet Earth was invaded by creatures from Mars. New York, Pittsburgh, Chicago, San Francisco, Atlanta. It was panic everywhere.
I'm extremely surprised to learn that a story which has become familiar to children through the medium of comic strips and many succeeding novels and adventure stories should have had such an immediate and profound effect upon radio listeners.
The terror you have just seen was caused by science fiction. Everything else in this motion picture that you will see is science fact. The phenomena you are about to witness could well revolutionize your way of thinking. We are presenting startling facts and evidence that take up where other explanations leave off. Some of these revelations may very well go against things you have been taught and perhaps believed all your life. Prepare yourself for the evidence which will follow. The producers accept no responsibility for any mental trauma caused by the contents of this motion picture. The earliest recorded sighting of a UFO was by an Egyptian pharaoh in the year 22. Since that time, UFOs have been a common occurrence, a very common occurrence.
We were passing through approximately 3,500 feet at the time, descending. And when we spotted the light, it was below us, I would say about 2,000 feet below us. We made a slight turn to get a better view of it, and at that point, the object or light started climbing at a fantastic rate. Its vertical speed was something I've never seen before. At this point, we went on continued on our downwind leg, and a Braniff aircraft also reported the same thing.
The chemical engineer looked at a UFO through Polaroid glasses. He saw concentric circles of light around the UFO. When he took the glasses off, the circles disappeared. This means that the light is polarized. And if it's polarized, it must have been caused by a magnetic effect. They calculated the magnetism necessary to be about 200,000 Gauss.
A Gauss is a unit of magnetic intensity. The Earth, for example, has a field of roughly 1/2 of a Gauss. And this is almost 500,000 times less intense than the kind that it took to cause those fringes. Perhaps this electromagnetic effect of the UFOs actually caused that big power blackout in New York in November of 1965.
Are you saying UFOs caused the power blackout?
Yes, definitely.
Is there any evidence?
Yes, there were sightings in upstate New York concurrently with that, especially around the Niagara Falls power complex.
It can't happen here? Well, it did. The elaborate power grid supplying electricity to parts of 9 northeastern states and Canada failed. And the question asked by 25 million people living in the affected area of 80,000 square miles was simply, how could it happen? And no one had an immediate answer.
In earlier instances, UFOs have been seen near power complexes with lines of energy leading out of them into the power lines. and this was associated with an actual voltage drop or power drop on the lines. This could indicate that they were refueling.
Dozens of cities blacked out. One moment, New York was glittering Gotham, the Great White Way ablaze. The next moment, only flickering candles, automobile headlights, and bobbing flashlights were probing a Stygian darkness.
You think it was an accident?
No.
No, that was probably caused by the UFOs.
I agree.
The object came up above the car, and at this point, we were both taken aboard the spaceship, and everything on the inside was rather silvery. The people, I guess you would have to call them people, the beings there, also had a sort of silvery tinge to their complexions. About 45 minutes later, we were back in the car. At this point, my daughter was crying, and she wouldn't tell me what was wrong. And I had noticed that the UFO, which was above the car and rather long in shape, had begun to pinpoint, and then it moved in a zigzag motion and then disappeared. And there wasn't anything else said about this till about a month and a half later, when she woke up from a dream one night crying again. And I asked her, what's the matter? And she said that she was going to die. And this is what they had told her. And I listened to this and I noted it, and sure enough, about a year and a half later, she did die, and she had cancer even at the time when she had told me this, and I didn't know that she had cancer. And in fact, no one had known this.
Donn Davison, the producer of this motion picture.
For years, I have investigated and explored the unknown in my private life. Finally, the weight of the evidence became so heavy that I had to put it on film for all the world to see. In my investigation, we uncovered incredible proof. Proof that should not be hidden. Proof that you should know. Our investigations were not easy. We searched for qualified and credible experts to aid us in our quest. Our investigations took us to many lands and strange environments. We covered enough distance to encompass the globe 2.5 times. We wanted to know the truth. Does Bigfoot exist? Are aliens from another world watching us? The answers to these questions, without exceptions, are a definite yes. The proof is on film, which you will see. In fact, the film that I am holding in my hand was smuggled from behind the Iron Curtain. It has never been shown to the public before, and it provides positive proof of visitors from another world. This is only one of the many myth-shattering proofs that we will show you. However, we must start at the beginning.
93 million miles from what is now Earth, approximately 4.5 billion years ago, a star was born out of the condensation of clouds of gaseous hydrogen. The sun, a great flaming globe with a diameter of approximately 864,000 miles and a heat at its core of about 20 million degrees centigrade, worshipped by the ancients. The sun, a divine symbol of creation, of love, and of life, mother of the earth. Even in recent history, men believed that the earth was the center of the universe, and all the stars revolved around it. In fact, less than 400 years ago, a monk named Giordano Bruno was burned at the stake for claiming that the earth revolved around the sun. The greatest reward from our space explorations is a tremendous opening of the human mind. Men marvel about the miracle of the creation and about the seemingly limitless reaches of space, and more so, they seek answers. The speed of 18,000 miles per hour would have been considered the ravings of a lunatic only 100 years ago. And yet, even at this speed, it would require 46 years to cross our solar system from one edge to the other. Light, however, moving at 186,282 miles per second, can traverse the same distance in 11 hours. But the solar system is no more than an infinitesimal grain of sand, a speck of nothing within a galaxy of 100 billion stars known as the Milky Way. And here we enter dimensions of space almost beyond human understanding. Distances are so tremendous that even the speed of light seems slow. In fact, to cross the Milky Way, it takes light 100,000 years. And yet our own Milky Way is but one speck of dust in a seemingly inordinate array of uncounted trillions of galaxies which are separated by vast distances. In a creation so vast that millions upon millions of years are required for even the fantastic speed of light to cross, can we possibly be so egocentric to suppose that we, on one tiny planet called Earth, could be the only living creatures in the universe?
I rather like Eddington's old paradigm for the situation. 10 to the 11th stars make a galaxy. 10 to the 11th galaxies make a universe. Those are good numbers still. And as for our own galaxy, it's estimated that perhaps 1 to 5% of the stars in it could provide on their planets, some of their planets, and a food for life. That would mean a billion such places just in our own galaxy that might contain life. And as for what life would mean in those places, I think it would mean something very like the life we know. Not the same creatures. We didn't have the same creatures on the Earth during its past as live here now.
It is possible to walk from California to Alaska without ever leaving the forest. Therefore, it is clear how a living creature could remain forever hidden in the dark bowels of this thick and awesome mountainous terrain that has become known as Bigfoot country. Eyewitnesses report this hairy, elusive giant, which we call Bigfoot or Sasquatch. From the Americas to the Himalayas, it is called Alma, Mana Grande, the abominable snowman, or the Yeti. Throughout history, multitudes have maintained that Bigfoot is a myth, yet a multitude of legends, the Holy Scriptures, and evidence as fresh as this morning's newspaper prove the existence of a humanoid creature that may well be the ancient brother of man.
I'm visiting with Peter Byrne, author, former big game hunter, who hunts these days with only a camera. Also, he's the only man in the world that searched for the elusive creature known as Bigfoot full-time. And Peter, we know that the Bigfoot is not the only creature that has failed to gain acceptance by large members of the scientific community, and for that matter, large segments of the general public.
Yes, that's true. There are several other animals in history. I think two good examples are the giant panda, the Chinese panda, and the African gorilla. The panda has been known in Chinese history for, 1,000 years or more. But scientists did not believe that they were there until the early 1900s. The gorilla, the lowland gorilla, I think first known about in about 1847, and the mountain gorilla, not until 1902, which is only a few years ago. And of course in the Bigfoot we have something very like that too.
So it's kind of the repetition of an old story, yes. Now, you tracked the Yeti in the Himalayas, and now you're here searching for Bigfoot. What brought you to the United States, Peter?
I came here to do an investigation of the Bigfoot mystery. I started an expedition, a search if you like, in 1971, and we thought it would last about 6 months, no more. Now we're in our 5th year, and we're still working on it.
We're pretty high atop the world here where we're talking. Where exactly are we?
We are in the high Cascades of north-central Oregon here. It's one of the main mountain ranges that runs from California all the way through to Alaska. Behind us here is Mount Hood, 10,000 feet, and right here we're at about 4,000 feet in the pine forests.
Well, in this general area where you've made headquarters here, there seems to be quite a bit more of Bigfoot activity than anywhere else in the country. What is the reason? Is there a particular reason why they center in here, or why this would be a Bigfoot habitat?
I think the main reason is that this is the principal mountain range, and these creatures, according to our research, live in the mountains, where there's lots of food, lots of water, and lots of dense cover, lots of dense forests. We're in the heart of it right here, and so it's an area that has produced a lot of evidence, a lot of footprint findings, and quite a few sightings.
Legends from all over the world tell us that gods came down to earth and mingled with mortal man. If this is true, then legend and the Holy Scriptures go hand in hand. Genesis 6:4 tells us there were giants in the earth in those days and after that, The sons of God came unto the daughters of men, and they bore children to them. Of Esau's birth it says, the first came out red all over like a hairy garment. Many feel the Bible chronicles a mating between terrestrials and extraterrestrials.
We moved into this area in early May. I looked at the timber. I saw something move, like two legs moving. And the cat skinner, Tom Brown, has fairly long legs, and I made the remark to the chaser, what's Tom doing over in the woods? And then I glanced down. I just saw his head sticking out behind the cat, his tin hat. And it wasn't Tom. And as I began to stare at what I saw moving, I saw a hairy arm reach out and casually touch the tree that it was walking by, just like it was for a daily stroll. And then it made a right angle and turned from me. And I saw these broad shoulders and just barely the nub of a head. And this thing moved with a grace that I've never seen before. The only thing that I could compare it with was a big buck deer and how they run. When they run, their horns never move. They move under their horns. And this thing moved with this same grace that it's hard to describe. But I knew that I'd seen something that I'd never seen before, because I know all the other animals in the area, and this thing was definitely, I'd say it was a Bigfoot.
René de Hendon, co-author of Sasquatch, is a Swiss-born Canadian adventurer and a man with a mission.
In order to understand what the Sasquatch investigation is all about, one has to understand the four main points, which consist of the Indian legends, which were here before the coming of the white man, the totem poles, the masks showing the Sunakwa, the Bakwas, and other related creatures which indicate Sasquatch-type reports. Also the journals of the explorers, which have mentioning of Bigfoot reports, newspaper accounts, etc., reaching way back in time. So the Sasquatch are nothing new at all. The second point to consider is that we have about 500-600 people who claim to have met creatures like the Sasquatch.
We walk into this cave and a tunnel for at least under 50 feet. We stop. At this moment, an incredible roar comes from the back of this huge cave. And then stone, big boulder, throw against the tunnel, and we froze. We froze because at this time we realized that actually we are in a cave of the big mono, like the Indians said. We try to retreat slowly, but finally panic come into in our brain, and we start running, and we fall many times, but we keep going. And we reach finally the entrance of the cave.
The third point are the footprints from a 13.5-inch track to a 17.5-inch track. Then we have the famous Patterson film, which was made October the 20th, 1967, in this area, Bluff Creek, tributary to the Klamath River, showing a creature which looks to be a female, 7 feet tall, hair covered, upright walking.
Legends and misidentifications do not leave footprints and bits of hair, and lies and hoaxes are eradicated by electronic voice print analysis, eyewitness sightings, and bits of film. Bits of film that the impartial eye of the camera has managed to capture for the closing of yet another link in the mystery of man. The film you're about to see is the first taken since the now famous Patterson film was taken by a young attorney while on a camping trip. Due to the controversial nature of the subject matter, he has chosen to remain anonymous. This is the first time that the film has been shown publicly.
It was very large and hairy and had a terrible smell, like rotten eggs. The thing that got to me was the way it walked. It was smooth and controlled, you know, almost like a gazelle.
In some green island of the sea, where now the shadowy coral grows, in pride and pomp and empery, the courts of old Atlantis rose. To help us in our search for Atlantis, we went to best-selling author Peter Tompkins. Peter has spent a great many years exploring the mysteries of the other world. Almost always, the answers were difficult to come by, sometimes taking years to fit the jigsaw-like pieces of evidence into answers. First, he unraveled the secrets of the Great Pyramids, and then he astounded the world with his book, The Secret Life of Plants. Now he is on another quest, and this time it takes on gargantuan proportions and uses unusual investigative techniques. Working with psychics who glimpse into the past, he is fitting the pieces slowly into place in the psychic search for Atlantis.
Describe 400 Pleiades, stars in the Pleiades, which we only see 6 now.
That is correct.
They must have had some system for doing that or recording it that we don't know about, no telescopes.
One can only speculate.
Could it be that they used psychic qualities? For instance, the Chuck Mole was dug up from 20 feet below the surface of the ground. Nobody knew it was there, purely by psychic intuition.
Well, I really don't believe in psychic intuition. However, sometimes it appears that it works.
And it works, then the proof is in the pudding.
Actually, Peter, where was Atlantis located?
It's been located all over the planet, from North Pole to South Pole, by savant and by freak. But the preponderance of evidence puts it in the Mediterranean, that is the whole Atlantean Empire, from the Mediterranean, from Etruria in Italy, to North Africa, to Spain, to off Cadiz, to the Madeira, to the Azores, and now we're getting hotter because in the middle of the Atlantic there was evidently geologically a continent that has sunk, which could have been part of the Atlantean mainland. The Sargasso Sea, all the way to the Mississippi, but Edgar Cayce put it here in the Bahamas, that in '68 it would rise there.
In the center of the screen, you can see underwater a J-like structure composed of thousands of blocks, rectangular and square. The Bimini Wall, or road as it has become known, is not a natural formation. Famous American psychic Edgar Cayce predicted that Atlantis would rise in 1968 or 69. In 1968, a small group of divers were diving for lobster where they and many before them had worked countless times previously. Suddenly, they discovered these extraordinary stone structures. The structures have been there for centuries, but covered with sand. With time's shifting of the sand, it rose in 1968, and scientist Dr. Mason Valentine had the good sense to know that they weren't just beach rock, but perhaps part of a huge man-built complex. This unique structure is composed of huge blocks as big as 20 feet square and weighing several tons. Beneath this visible layer lie yet other layers of ancient blocks. Considering the depth of the water and the location, this extraordinary structure was presumably submerged 12,000 years ago, which was approximately the time Atlantis was said to have vanished. It is interesting to note in dealing with psychic investigation that psychics are many times able to see with their mind that which is invisible to the naked eye. In this case, several psychics were able to converge on specific points to give the geologists and archaeologists something to explore. Notice that the blocks are placed together with a precision that has only been possible with advanced technology, a phenomenon not unlike that of the Great Pyramids in Egypt and South America. This amazing search is taking place with the use of man's greatest tool, the human mind.
If Cayce could predict things and they came true, the idea was, let's use other psychics to take you out, like dowsing for water. They can go out and say, look there, I feel something there. You don't see anything under the water, anything under the sand, but you dig and you find something.
Frances Farrelly is a leading psychic medical diagnostician for doctors. She can hold a blood sample in her hand and either directly feel what the patient is afflicted with or determine it by rubbing right on the top of the desk or table in front of her. She is one of several leading psychics engaged in this unique project. Another psychic has determined that beneath 3 shipwrecks lie the ruins of a possible Atlantean temple. Peter is working here with Fran to zero in psychically on the location of the wrecks.
1,480, 82, 83.
BC?
Yes.
Wow.
That's what I'm getting. I don't know if it makes any sense.
Where was the boat coming from?
It's coming from South America, but it's headed toward the Mediterranean.
What is it?
It originally came from the Mediterranean, but whatever it was done, it's gone out and come back.
Is it Phoenician?
No, I don't get it, Phoenician.
Is it Hittite?
I'm getting a slight reaction there. I got a slight reaction to that.
Good. What's it carrying? What sort of a cargo?
Something for structures. There's some... I'm asking if there's gold. It's a little bit. I get stones or jewels quite strong. I think that was part
Large
of it.
or small stones?
I think there's some of both. But that was not the main cargo. That was just something that was on board. And...
What's the main cargo?
I'm getting something for structure, such as pillars or columns.
Here, Jack Horkheimer has hypnotically regressed his subject, Roby Young, backward in time. What is revealed by this regression corroborates the clairvoyant images received by Francis Farrelly. Here, Roby finds himself in the body of a young man on a voyage of long ago.
It's the front part. It doesn't have the woman, just the point, and there's a signboard. The name, it's painted, it's green, and the name is gold. It's on it, and it's black chain, anchor chain. Well, it's pointing south, west, and it's calm.
Tell me, how old is this person that you seem to be?
I... 17? 16?
How old? 16?
I was younger before.
Is there a young man about 17 aboard?
I think that he's younger than that. Okay, let me check if I can get it. I think he's between 14 and 15 years old.
What happens to him?
Well, I think when this ship hits, he's thrown overboard. And here's where I think it's only fair to say that in doing this type of thing, you sometimes, being asked a question, suddenly switch into a clairvoyant thing.
And you get a
picture. I see him. I'm getting it as a picture. He is injured, but he's holding on to what I would presume is a piece of wood. And he's on that.
But he succumbs.
But I doubt that he made it. I don't think he made it to shore. But he was not instantly drowned.
Not instantly drowned.
What are you hanging on to?
No room in the hold. Put it on the deck, sliding back, through.
Tell me what's happening.
Thing is going over.
What's going over?
It's on top of me.
What's going on top of you?
Thing. Ox. I...
What are you doing? Tell me what you're doing. Can you see light?
No.
What do you see?
Once again, the mind is reaching out and chipping off pieces of a mystery that has puzzled mankind for at least 12,000 years. Perhaps someday soon, the discovery of Atlantis will become a reality. While Atlantis has been a mystery for thousands of years, there are baffling disappearances in our modern-day world. In 1912, outside Bangor, Maine, a large barn vanished silently in the night mist. In 1872, the riverboat Iron Mountain, with 55 passengers and crew, left Vicksburg bound for Louisville and Cincinnati. The Iron Mountain vanished. No wreckage, no cargo, all gone without a trace. On September 23, 1880, outside Gallatin, Tennessee, farmer David Lang walked into his pasture and vanished. This strange disappearance was witnessed by two guests, one a judge and Lang's family. When they reached the spot, they found nothing. Under persistent questioning by the authorities, the stories of all the witnesses remained the same. David Lang was never heard from again. And in Wales in 1909, an 11-year-old lad named Oliver Thomas was sent to the well for water. Seconds later, he emitted a cry for help. The last words little Oliver ever said were, "Help, they're taking me away." In 1939, 2,988 Chinese troops were stationed south of Nanking to hold off the attacking Japanese forces. Less than 2 hours after they arrived, the first hint of trouble came. They failed to respond to radio communication, and all the search parties ever found was equipment, guns, and cooking fires. Also, during the Spanish War of Secession, 4,000 soldiers vanished in the Pyrenees. In this instance, even their equipment and horses vanished. In 1885, French colonial forces, about 600 in number, were marching in French Indochina. At last report, they were 15 miles from Saigon. They were in open country and not under attack. They all vanished, and not one body or a single piece of equipment was ever found. A most fascinating case in the annals of missing persons centers around the Navy L8 Blimp. This actual Navy film was taken previously at Moffett Field. In 1942, in the San Francisco harbor, the L8 with 2 Navy men aboard spotted an oil slick and went closer to investigate. 2 patrol boats stood watching. Suddenly, without warning, the blimp soared upward into a huge cloud. Anxiety-ridden observers waited to know its fate. Later, the blimp descended rapidly, and there was no one in it. The crew had vanished, never to be seen again. The Navy had no explanation. Clouds often seem to play a large part in these mysterious disappearances. Even more interesting is the fact that there are many reports of clouds in connection with UFO phenomena. In the Bible, there are numerous references to clouds. For instance, in Exodus 19:9, we are told, "And the Lord said unto Moses, Lo, I come unto thee in a thick cloud." And in Exodus 12:21, "The Lord went before by day in a cloud to lead the way, and by night in a pillar of fire to give them light." Mythology and American Indian legends persist in their chronicalization of the flight of spirits and gods in cloud-like vehicles. Here we have lenticular clouds, which are often mistaken for flying saucers. However, meteorologists are quick to explain how they are formed and that there is nothing unearthly about them. But an interesting point to remember is that many experts feel that flying saucers are many times mistaken or explained away as clouds. Many experts go further for a battery of technical reasons to believe that clouds are, in many instances, formed as a camouflage for extraterrestrial vehicles. It becomes especially intriguing when we learn that clouds seem to be an ever-present specter centering around mysterious disappearances in the Devil's Triangle. An interesting incident in this dreaded sector of the Savage Sea involves a National Airlines 727 and a strange time lapse. The national plane was on approach to landing from the northeast. Suddenly it disappeared from the radar screen, only to reappear 10 minutes later. When the plane landed without incident, the crew was unaware of this strange occurrence. When they were informed by the tower, they checked their watches and discovered to their amazement that they were uniformly 10 minutes slow according to real time. Especially mysterious because a routine check 20 minutes before the incident showed no time discrepancy. Two of the most famous cases centered around the unexplained disappearances of the USS Cyclops and a British vessel also named Cyclops. A post-war check of German sub-operations revealed no activity in either case. The Devil's Triangle extends from Bermuda in the north to southern Florida, and then east to a point through the Bahamas, past Puerto Rico, to approximately 40 degrees west longitude, and then back once again to Bermuda. Within this area lies the Sargasso Sea, a sea of lost ships covered with living rootless weed. It was within this sea that Christopher Columbus reported being trapped in the weed and the wild fluctuation of the ship's compass. The most interesting part of the journey in this sea of fear was on September 15, 1492, when Columbus logged the sighting of a UFO. On December 5, 1945, 5 U.S. Navy Avenger torpedo bombers were headed for the Sargasso Sea on a routine training flight. 1 hour and 45 minutes later, the control tower was advised that not one of the 5 navigators knew where he was. Moments later, a radio transmission from the flight leader was cut in mid-sentence. Nothing was ever heard from any of them again. An air and sea search began immediately. A Martin Mariner flying boat with rescue and survival equipment headed for the presumed position of the planes. Once again, radio contact was lost. Tragedy repeated itself as the Mariner also vanished without a trace. An extensive air-sea search involving over 250 planes and ships began immediately. They crisscrossed for hours in that little patch of the Sargasso Sea. Not a shred of evidence was ever found. A Naval Board of Inquiry reported, "We are not able to make even a good guess as to what happened." The Navy Avengers, a famous case that once again involves instrument malfunction, human disorientation, and instant oblivion over these mysterious waters.
In 2 such Air Force planes, medical teams set off over the Atlantic to practice parachute rescue in preparation for the 2-man Gemini space program. But 2 miles off the southern coast of Bermuda, the transport's wingtips touch. The planes burst into flames and plunge into the sea.
Experienced pilots collide over the Devil's Triangle in broad daylight. Another mystery, another unanswered question.
We're flying right over the midst and the heart of the Devil's Triangle. Jim Richardson has been flying over these waters for a number of years. Jim, has anything unusual happened?
The misbehavior of some of the electrical or magnetic instruments within the airplane.
Now, with this magnetic disturbance that has happened to your instruments, what do you feel causes that? Would there not have to be some sort of a very strong magnetic power or a power drawing source or something of that nature?
When a UFO is nearby, this would upset the electrical or magnetic compass.
Now, you said earlier when we were speaking about this area about some lights under the water. Would you tell us about that?
On a boat trip, there was a light sighted off our starboard side, and then all the lights on the boat went out. But when the lights came back on, some of the crew was looking over the stern and observing a green flashing light under the surface of the water.
Grace Robbins lives here in Bimini, and she has some very interesting stories to tell about unusual sights that she has seen. And these stories coincide with the stories of many others that live in this area and visit this area. Grace, you told me about strange lights under the water.
Yes, one night me and my boyfriend went for a ride. The moon was bright, but it was glitters in the water. You know, it was not from the moon or nothing like that. It was just glitters and
you've seen the reflection of the moon many times, and this was not the reflection of the moon.
Right.
Now, did the lights go away, or did you go away, Grace?
We went away.
You went away. Okay, now, you told me also about a flying saucer that you saw one night.
Yeah, we were riding up again, and, we just saw this light moving, and in about 5 minutes, it just disappeared.
In his best-selling book, Kon-Tiki, Thor Heyerdahl makes note of seeing moving lights under the water. Over 1,000 planes and ships have disappeared here in this ominous region known as the Devil's Triangle.
As you can see by now, these well-kept secrets of the unknown are in many ways linked together. Clouds, fast-moving lights under the water, and mysterious disappearances. They all play a strategic part as we present some truly amazing UFO revelations. The evidence is so precise that you will be able to see how this last piece of the puzzle fits into place. From ancient times to today, man has recorded UFOs.
In 329 BC, Alexander the Great tells of two great shining silvery shields that died repeatedly at his army. Aristotle qualified the subjects he saw in the sky as heavenly discs. Cicero reported the sky seemed to split and strange spheres appeared in it. This sensational find of these fully matured adult skeletons that barely reach the height of 2 feet seems to go along with the legends and reports of little people that inhabit the silvery sky discs. Could these well-preserved remains be another link in the mystery of the secrets of the gods? These skeletons were unearthed in Badlands, Utah, in the United States of America. This prehistoric monolith, found in Colorado, is similar to the strange stone godlike statues on Easter Island and other remote areas of the world. Proof that all over the world are remains of obviously advanced civilizations that leave us with these intriguing bits of ancient evidence. In August of 1973, the astronauts of Skylab 2 were assigned to photograph the Nazca lines, now believed to be an ancient landing strip for extraterrestrial vehicles. This early newsreel shows the accidental discovery of these linear patterns that could only be deciphered from the air, patterns made by an ancient civilization that had no recorded access to flight.
Winging south on a run-of-the-mill assignment, Movietone's Jack Kuhn cannot resist the beauty of Peru's Cordillera de los Andes. An impulse that wins one's gratitude for these glorious exposures on one of nature's most majestic efforts. Epics in grandeur, in the shadow of which men have struggled for nearly 28 centuries, and which must have impressed Pizarro and his conquistadores during their destruction of the Inca Empire. The fortunate chance of having his camera at the ready allowed Kuhn to make an historic discovery. Those markings on the ground are now baffling archaeologists. According to Dr. James Ford of New York's Museum of Natural History, there are two opinions among the experts. Some say they represent an attempt at astronomy by the ancients. Others opine they represent ceremonial roads. All that seems certain is that they are of pre-Inca origin.
In June of 1908, an object weighing over 50,000 tons sped into the Earth's atmosphere and exploded in Siberia near the Yenisei River. At first, it was thought to be a meteorite, but the intense radiation and the absence of a crater proved conclusively that it was not. All evidence shows that it was an atomic explosion. Could it have been a UFO that blew up? Experts tell us that the UFOs are powered by electromagnetic energy or a form of atomic energy. Take note of the trees all lying on the ground and compare with footage taken shortly after the atomic blast at Hiroshima. Their similarity is astounding, and most certainly another of the answers we seek. These early film clips and newsreels record the beginning of an interest in UFOs that has grown into a furor during the past 3 decades. In 1954, Scandinavian cameramen filmed 2 shiny white discs while filming an eclipse of the sun. According to the 50 eyewitnesses aboard, the discs rotated rapidly and were thought to be about 20 miles from the plane.
The sky is the stage, the actors, so-called flying saucers. And they're back on the scene with some new twists. Rumors about the saucer mystery fly almost as fast as the strange sights themselves. But suddenly the Air Force takes off to intercept unexplained objects in the sky over Washington. Despite the appearance of the supposed saucers on radar, the planes draw a blank. But at other points, there's a flurry of saucer sighting incidents. Across the river from New York City, a Jersey City volunteer air defense observer reports that not only has he spotted a flying saucer in the nighttime sky over Manhattan, but that he's actually photographed it. The so-called saucer is in the upper corner of the photograph. The round light, he says, is a beacon on top of a skyscraper.
Soon thereafter, people started making their own flying saucers, sometimes with disastrous results. However, all attempts were not failures, but some of them strayed somewhat from the disc-like shape. Everyone got into the act, making everything from models to life-size craft. And just as all UFOs are not saucer-shaped, the man-made vehicles, too, took on a new form. However, the saucer shape proved to be the most popular and still prevails today. One of the most advanced saucer makers was a California professor who had a genuine urge to make them fly, and he's still at it.
I'm sitting here with Dr. Paul Mahler, who is a former professor of engineering and aeronautics at the University of California. Today, Dr. Mahler is president of the Discojet Corporation, and for the past 15 years, he's been busily engaged in researching and investigating and designing and actually building his own flying saucers. Dr. Mahler, we hear an awful lot today about flying saucers and UFOs. What do you feel is behind the sightings and the UFO story?
I think people are seeing legitimate sightings of vehicles that appear to be very much different from anything else that they can recognize. Sightings that deserve a lot of serious consideration, a lot of investigation.
Well, the government seems to actually, in effect, make people skeptics. We were speaking about this. How do they do that?
Well, if a person sees a legitimate sighting, at least he considers it legitimate, and it's out in the open and very clear-cut to him, and the Air Force puts it down as a crackpot observation. Obviously, he's going to be reluctant to report in the future, or other people are going to be reluctant to report it in the future.
Well, now, in our conversation, we're speaking about saucers and shapes. Why do you feel that beings or aliens or creatures or whatever from other galaxies would use a shape such as the one of the vehicle we're in? Why the disc or saucer shape in most cases?
Well, the vehicle's only going to be used in outer space where aerodynamics, at least aerodynamics as we know it in the atmosphere, is not important. Then you don't have to have the aircraft shape because that's strictly for aerodynamic stability. This shape is the ideal shape. It carries the maximum volume and the maximum payload for the minimum drag and the minimum interference.
So to sum it up, it's quicker, cleaner, and cheaper than our aircraft as we know it today would be. So you feel that within our lifetime it's entirely possible that we may hear Mother sending Junior over to the store in a flying saucer to pick up a loaf of bread?
I think that's very, very possible, very likely, in fact.
Well, I'm certainly feel sure that Dr. Mahler and Discojet, you will both be a big part of that, and I certainly hope this venture takes you to new heights.
At the unlikely corner of 45th Street and 9th Avenue on New York's west side lies a treasure chest of research and knowledge for the novice as well as the expert in ufology.
Jim Rigberg, you've had this store for quite a number of years. What do you feel in all the different material that you've gathered here is the most interesting to people? Is it the UFO material? Is that the most
I
interesting?
would say the UFO seems to have more interest than anything else, really.
Have you ever seen a UFO, Jimmy?
I've seen one years ago.
The interest in the UFO mystery is worldwide and fits into all walks of life. Virtually every country in the world has clubs, magazines, and newsletters and some form of government investigative body concerning UFOs. Considering that 87.4% of all the incidents and eyewitness reports that flood in from remote corners of the world are identical, it would seem that coincidence or publicity-seeking frauds are an impossibility. Thus, if the same phenomenon occurs from Idaho to India, it is assumed that the extraterrestrials are trying to speak the same message to all peoples of the world. Since all evidence points to the fact that they are non-violent, the assumption would be that the communications are of a friendly nature. This attitude of brotherhood and the eternally questioning mind of man brought people from all parts of the world together for the International UFO Conference. Our expedition, complete with cameras, crews, and investigators, took us to the convention center to learn more.
An announcement. 1, no smoking in the auditorium. No smoking at all. This is a meeting of people, again, from all walks of life, interested in a common endeavor, trying to find, again, maybe a little bit closer to a solution. Just what is this thing? What is going on, if anything, in our our skies. This meeting was primarily called for investigators. The true, real, genuine,
I would be amazed
appointed, selected, or otherwise investigator for UFO organizations. You are better than I about the UFO phenomenon. Various things that maybe they are. Various things that perhaps they are not. Certainly some things we know that they are not. And by the way, as an aside, I want to say to those attending this conference, if nothing else, I hope that we decide, and that we do, set aside the hopes from reality. And I'm going to call a spade a spade.
I've had a couple of serious questions. I spoke at Manchester College, and one of the profs there felt that UFOs were the work of the devil. This is
I wonder how honest each of you are.
Business that's going
I do. I want, and I say that.
We're speaking with Mrs. Linda Soul and family from Nacogdoches, Texas. Mrs. Soul, why have you come to Fort Smith to this UFO convention?
Because I'm interested in UFOs, and I wanted to see what all the speakers had to present, different ideas, and how objective it was.
Now, you told me a little earlier that you have seen UFOs. Is this true?
Yes.
Could you describe briefly one of the sightings that you've had, or what you would consider the most spectacular or unusual, or be the most interesting?
Well, it wouldn't be of interest to anybody but me, because I was scared to death, but it was just a big, bright orange, looked like a large star. You know, nothing I could define, no certain shape or anything.
I'm speaking with Walt Andrus, who is director of MUFON. Walt, would you explain very briefly what MUFON is?
MUFON, or the Mutual UFO Network, is a group of people internationally organized to try to resolve the four basic questions concerning the UFO phenomena. First, UFOs exist. The evidence is overwhelming that they do. Second, how are these craft powered? How are they able to maneuver at tremendous speeds? This is what our aerospace engineers would like to have the answers to. The third question posed is, where are they from? Are they extraterrestrial in origin, or is it some psychic phenomena or physical manifestation that present-day science doesn't understand? And the fourth question, what can we learn from the supposedly or assumed people that pilot these craft? Evidently, they're more advanced than we are, sociology-wise and scientific-wise. So we're set for that express purpose of answering those four basic questions through UFO scientific research. The first step is to contact the witnesses. We have 9 sighting report forms. We'll go out and conduct an interview, both oral and also make tape recordings of the interview, obtain all the necessary data. What did they see?
It was a perfectly clear night. It was in the winter. Orion, the constellation above, right in the zenith, was visible. And I had my binoculars. And I was watching a satellite coming across the sky in this direction. And right when it was directly above me at the zenith, another light came out of the north, about the same magnitude as the satellite, came right up to the satellite where the satellite's path had went by. And then the satellite went on. It just stood there for 30 seconds. And then it just took off back to the north and fade out in the lights.
We have 55 consultants, most of them with doctorates in their own fields of expertise, that we submit these cases to. We submit these cases also to a computer. Our number 2 form is a computer input. We feed these to Dr. David R. Saunders at the Center for UFO Studies in Evansville, Illinois. He now has 42,000 UFO sighting reports plugged into his data bank computer. So yes, the evidence is overwhelming that we have craft of some type. And it appears, and probably the most exciting explanation, that the craft are extraterrestrial in origin.
Now, these people that have come to this conference, who are they, or what are they, or what actually are their qualifications for this investigative work?
Well, in the first place, then, they were attending a UFO conference, so that meant that they had an interest in UFOs. Other than that, we had the directors of America's leading serious UFO investigative and research organizations. And along with those, we had several government organizations and agencies participating for the very first time, by the way, in any type of UFO or flying saucer gathering.
So then there definitely is some agreement or at least official interest at this point in time from the government.
As far as I know, there has always been some interest from the government agencies pertaining to unknown items in our space. This will have been the first time that our space agencies will have participated, as I said, and they are very muchly interested in the unknown and in the UFO.
Well, thank you, Bill Pitts, here on the closing day of convention site in Fort Smith, Arkansas. Have you ever seen a UFO?
Well, I seen something in the sky. I didn't know what it was. As far as spaceships or something, I don't believe there is until I see one.
You'd have to actually see it to believe it.
Yes, sir, I would.
But what you've seen, you couldn't explain what it was that you saw, right?
That's right. I seen some odd shapes up there since I've been on the police force and before. And people called me out their house, and they showed me what they see, and it's weird.
Was there any rapid movement or anything like that concerning any of these UFOs?
Well, I seen one. One I just shoot across the sky and stop, turn around, come back. Now, what that was, I don't know.
Thank you very much. I know that some of the more impressive cases have been written up in these many books that you've authored, and I see, too, that some of the books have even been translated into foreign languages.
Yes, that's true.
Well, in addition to the books that we see here, you have several very interesting artifacts, and I'd like to have your help in explaining to us exactly what they are. Now, one of the very interesting things here are these things that appear to be little bits of metal. Could you explain what that is?
Well, those are fragments of metal preserved in plastic, and we performed tests on these. They're from a reported crashed disc in Brazil, and the metal has a purity structure that's quite unusual. The impurity signature hasn't been duplicated in any Earth-originated magnesium that we know of.
So, in other words, you would have good reason because of this to believe that this would come from some extraterrestrial aircraft.
Yes, while it isn't proven, absolutely, it certainly is good circumstantial evidence.
Yeah, something that's been intriguing me since we first started talking and is this glove. Could you explain this glove? This is kind of a strange...
Well, this was worn by a prospector who was out in a wild area in Canada and says that a flying disc landed in the clearing, and he tried to communicate with whoever was flying it. They didn't respond, and he eventually came up and touched the vehicle with the glove, and it was hot and burned the glove, according to his account.
Now, Jim, let me ask you, this is something that... This is an intriguing piece of evidence, but what assurance do we have that this man didn't burn this on a stove and is telling a big story to get his name in the paper or, you know,
well, he also told us that when the craft left, there was some kind of a hot jet flame that struck him in the chest, and it burned him in this manner, and these burns crop up periodically about every 120 days. I don't really think that a man would burn himself in this manner just to perpetrate a hoax. And besides this, he did take a polygraph test, and it had a positive result.
Well, Jim, in view of all the evidence that you have seen and collected and the thousands of cases that APRO has investigated, would you be drawn to the conclusion that flying saucers do indeed exist?
Yes, I think there's a body of evidence that supports the extraterrestrial hypothesis. And I, for one, think that there is other intelligent life in the universe.
When we speak of life beyond Earth, what we generally mean is, of course, intelligent life, something resembling our noble selves. It is highly probable that there are such intelligent forms of life in other galaxies in the universe. And it is even more probable that many of these forms are vastly more intelligent than we.
The Earth seems fairly familiar to those of us who live on it, but most likely it holds many questions for the extraterrestrials as their worlds do for us. It is obvious that they too have questioning minds. The evidence is conclusive. As early as 1824, man has recorded strange round-shaped objects moving in front of and around the moon. The Lunar Orbiter 2 took photographs of the lunar surface from a distance of 23 miles. The results showed 8 megalithic structures that indicate construction by intelligent beings. The structures are between 40 and 75 feet high and similar to an elongated pyramid in shape. Megaliths of heights reaching over 150 feet are discernible in photographs taken by the Soviet Luna 9. The two groups of objects are arranged in definite geometric patterns. In October of 1975, the news services reported a dust storm on the moon. Because the moon has no atmosphere, the only way this can occur is if something lands or takes off, as you can see in this official NASA film. Neither Russia nor the U.S. had any activity on the moon during this period. Who did? And on Friday, November 14th, 1969, two brightly flashing crafts near the path of Apollo 12 were sighted by observatories all over Europe. Huge telescopes showed that one object appeared to be following the spacecraft and the other one seemed to be moving in front of it. Both were blinking off and on rapidly. It could very well be that the moon is an observation post for aliens who study life as we know it. This official NASA footage shows what appears to be a UFO passing by the moon's surface.
An important part of tracking the UFOs depends on accurate research and well-kept records.
That's true, Don. In gathering material for my magazine, I only use accredited writers and researchers. If the information isn't documented, it simply doesn't go in.
Well, just as you take great care in the preparing of your magazine, we've tried to do that in this film. And in the making of this film, we've had the expert advice from some truly amazing people. Major Coleman von Kavitsky from Hungary is one of them. Major von Kavitsky has taken his military expertise and used it to develop a complicated and strategic analysis of global UFO sightings. Here, Major von Kavitsky is lecturing to a group of New York college students.
We placed on the map all reports of the news media and the local newspapers, and we find that from the south, from the Gulf of Mexico, in direction to the north, to the Great Lake areas, a formal military maneuver was carried out by the extraterrestrial task forces. The key points of this operation was the abduction of two fishing men in Pascagoula.
These three things, they came out of the doorway of the craft, and they seemed to just glide across the ground. They didn't touch the ground. They were about 5 or 5'4" tall. They had something that resembled a nose and ears, and a slit under the nose that resembled a mouth, but if they had any eyes, I can't recall what they looked like, because in that area they were, it was very wrinkled. In fact, the entire body, you might say, was wrinkled, with the wrinkles running horizontal, but in the area where the eyes should have been was very wrinkled. And they had something like human arms, but their hands, it could have been like mittens on their hands, and then a thumb, something like, you might say, pinchers. So they carried me aboard the craft, and as far as I know, I didn't touch anything inside the craft, and the light was so blinding in there. There could have been instruments or gauges or something, but I can't recall what they looked like because the light was almost blinding. But then it seemed that in the wall in front of me, something came out from the wall. It appeared to be a big eye, because the reason I say eye, the end it was focused toward me, it was something like the pupil of an eye, and it was a different color, a different type of material than the rest of the object, which was, the entire thing was about the size of a football. This thing came out from the wall and came up to within 6 or 8 inches of my face, and it remained there for a while, for a few seconds, and then it seemed to go down in front of me, and I'm assuming it came back behind me, because it seemed to come from over my head and came back in front of me and remained there for a few more seconds, and then it goes back into the wall. These things brought me back outside of the craft, and we seemed to be just gliding or floating, and they carried me back to almost the exact spot, and they let me to the ground. And as I touched the ground, my feet gave way. I guess it's because, I don't know whether it's from the fear or what caused them to be weak, but anyway, I fell to the ground, and it's about this time I seen Calvin. He was standing there with his arms outstretched. He was toward the river, and I heard this zipping-like sound again, and I turned around and looked, and that the craft was just almost immediately, it was gone.
We have to act on the problem. Act to establish something, to establish an international authority where all the reports will be collected, computerized, analyzed, evaluated, and all the governments will be informed. It's vital significant and vital important for all the nations. Thank you very much.
We are here in the borrowed studios of KFPW Television in Fort Smith, Arkansas. In just a moment, we're going to witness an unusual experiment. Dr. Leo Sprinkle from the University of Wyoming is going to hypnotize a young man who had an early childhood encounter with a flying saucer and a creature from another world. Now, in order to help him more perfectly reconstruct his memory, Dr. Sprinkle is going to attempt to return the man to the age of 8 when the encounter occurred. Now, we're not quite certain what's going to happen here this afternoon, but one thing is for sure. You're not likely to forget it soon.
Okay, Morris, as we discussed previously, you'll be able to relax deeper and deeper, faster and faster, letting the entire body relax deeper and deeper, letting the toes and feet, ankles and calves, knees and thighs, hips and torso, hands and wrists, arms and shoulders, neck and head, letting the entire body relax deeper and deeper, being able to go back in time, back to the experience, being able to talk and describe your reactions to the experience.
It seemed to descend rapidly. And it appeared that it had landed on the far side of the wood from us. We were amazed at what we'd seen. We couldn't believe it, hardly. We noticed as we looked up, and even after it had landed, there seemed to be something, little, like particles falling from the sky. It reminded us of light snowflakes, but not as real. It just, you could almost see through them. And just as it would fall to where you could reach, touch one, it would disappear. You couldn't see it.
Just disappeared.
And even if we sat down, it looked like it'd come closer to us, but as soon as you'd reach to try to touch it, they melted away. And we were staring at this for some time when Roger noticed someone standing down by the edge of the wood. And we began to walk toward him, calling to him cautiously. As we got closer, Roger and Eric saw him pointing something at us. And we all began to feel a tingling sensation. Not real intense, but all over. And this began to frighten us. We continued to call to him, approaching slowly. Then Roger gave out a scream and began to cry as he held his shoulder. And upon lifting his T-shirt, there was a red place just below the collarbone. It looked like he'd been hit. Just as if he'd been punched by something hard, and it was painful to him, and he cried, and it scared us, and we immediately just ran as quickly as we could back to our home, through the fences and gates, and went charging into the house. First impression was like a midget. He was completely in a uniform, or what was like the spacesuits I'd seen on TV. He had the helmet, and the suit was white. The helmet was white, and it had
something over the front, over the face. It looked very much like a person might have looked.
In a few moments now, you'll be able to return to the normal state, coming back from that experience, back to this time and place, feeling fine and feeling good. If you wish, you can just count mentally from 1 to 5, counting from 1, 2, 3, coming more and more to the normal state, feeling fine and feeling good. 4, now wide awake at 5, wide awake and feeling fine. How are you doing?
Okay.
How did it feel to you as you just went back to the memories? It's
real.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
The body was clothed in what looked like a spacesuit, you know, like our astronauts wear.
They glide over the ground instead of walking.
Hands are somewhat like ours, but he carried a stick-like weapon in one of his hands.
The eyes were slanted upwards at the outside corners.
He was about 3 of those He carried a stick-like weapon in one of his hands.
The eyes were slanted upwards at the outside corners.
Like our astronauts wear.
They glide over the ground instead of walking.
I thought the war of the world was happening for real.
This life-size model was made from a computerized composite description of an alien visitor. The descriptions came from contactees and eyewitnesses. Take a good look, for you may well be looking at your new neighbor.
I believe in UFOs. The fact that there's so many planets out there, and I think it would be a little naive for us to think that we were the only beings or living beings inhabiting a planet. I would hate to think that we were the smartest.
Our first indication was that it was a ship. It was an extremely large target in this vicinity, which is right in the shipping lanes coming into New York Harbor. And it's not an unusual occurrence to see ships on the ocean there, on the radar, so we at first assumed it was a ship. On further observation, we noticed that it accelerated extremely rapidly, started moving at extremely high rates of speed, and was making extreme difficult maneuvers, such as right-angle turns. And it became obvious then that we had something other than a ship out there.
There have been other reports that we have heard about targets being seen on radar scopes, moving at very slow rates of speed and then changing speeds rapidly to very high rates of speed. I've heard of stories from the Washington, D.C. area of targets that showed up on the radar scope near the vicinity of the White House. Naturally, when this happens, airplanes are scrambled out. And once the airplanes were scrambled out, the targets just disappeared. The airplanes returned to base, and once they did, the targets reappeared on the scope, moving at rates of speed that no aircraft on a radar scope would do. Basically, the same thing happened in this case, except the target was much bigger than any one airplane could have been. About the size of what we'd normally pick up as a ship, like Jerry said. But the speeds that it made and the turns that we observed it make made it impossible for it to be a ship.
There was no way it could have been a ship. It was much too large to be a ship. Much too large, much too fast moving. And it remains a mystery. It's unknown, but it still piques the interest.
I'm with Lieutenant John Walsh of the Parsippany Troy Hills Police Department. Lieutenant Walsh was the desk officer on duty the evening of July 4th when the UFO incident which occurred in the Parsippany area was brought to the attention of this department. Lieutenant Walsh, could you tell us, as best as you can recall, exactly what happened on that evening?
Well, I came on duty at 12 o'clock for the 12 to 8 shift. At approximately 12:05, I began having troubles with the radio transmissions from headquarters to the cars, from the cars back to headquarters. I would transmit a message to the car, and it would go out, and all of a sudden I would get a very strong hum from the radio coming back to headquarters. Later on, approximately 12:30, a male and a female came into headquarters and reported that they had sighted an unidentified flying object in the area of Persephone. They walked up to me and they said that they would like, if possible, for someone to go into it or delve into it a little bit to see if they could get something or someone to give a little bit of credit to what they had possibly seen.
As you're probably aware that during that same time frame on that evening, the Denville Police Department also reported an unusual type of radio disturbance, and in fact did dispatch a patrolman and found that his report and the description that he gave us very closely blends with that which was reported to your department on that evening.
Yes, I believe that was a patrolman, McConnell.
When I was given the call by the dispatcher, I was in the center of town. I proceeded down Bloomfield Avenue to Route 46. The intersection, I had a red light, and I began observing the area of the Arrow Diner, which is where I was, sent, the call I was sent on. I pull out. When I did, I observed 3 lights, one light, one solid light, another solid light, and a rotating light on the bottom. There was really no structure to be seen. They were just like suspended out in the middle of the Flintlock restaurant parking lot. Then it began to gain height and headed in the easterly direction up over the trees. And again, it stayed for a few seconds in that position over the top of the building, and then it just went directly down. I proceeded up 46. I was unable to find anything. I really thought that it went down behind Denville Boat and Sport. But if you look, there is a leg back there.
George and I met at the Persephone headquarters and went out to the airport at Caldwell Field to interview a pilot.
He told us that he had taken his aircraft up and closed in on this object and attempted to get closer to it for a better observation, at which time the object took off at a high rate of speed. He couldn't calculate the exact speed, but he did indicate that it was extremely fast. Now, the route that he took us also corroborates the route that the original people had reported to us.
Let me start by saying that, some months ago, I became a believer in UFOs. Until that time, I really didn't believe they did exist. But I would say that since we've had the sighting locally, since it's been documented by our police department, I think that our chief and our police department has initiated a program of making the citizenry and the police within our county aware. And I think that it goes some credit to Chief Fox and Deputy Chief Denny.
I think that the average police officer is in the position to report these type of incidents with credibility and accuracy. And subsequently, the institution of this program, whereby the Morris County Chiefs of Police Association, together with the Sheriff's Department of Morris County, will be putting on a one-day seminar to better educate the police officers in this county in how to handle sightings and reportings of UFOs.
I became very concerned when we had a sighting. And where do we go from there? Now, we have an obligation to the public so as to not to panic them. I don't want to see another Orson Welles occurrence occurring in Persephone Troy Hills.
I think it's incumbent upon all law enforcement agencies on a local and county basis, as well as the state and federal government, to accept and investigate any reports or complaints of the public. In the particular incident of UFOs, I think the chief and the deputy chief will agree with me that our officers are not really trained in this aspect as well as they are in the matter of criminal investigations.
I'd like to point out that this particular area of New Jersey has had several significant sightings in the past years, and the interest shown by the departments up here has, I think, indicated the need for some kind of program to assist them in looking into these cases in an intelligent manner.
And so the evidence continues to mount from credible sources all over the world. You are about to see amazing film clips of UFOs.
We have managed to obtain official NASA films which reveal UFOs in outer space. Looking closely at the left-hand side of the screen, you can see the white sphere, presumably in a position for observation of Earth. Note that this clip shows two UFOs as they glide through space. Many UFO sightings record what appears to be a leader, followed by several ships flying in formation. Astronaut James McDivitt photographed this UFO, which he described as a beer can with a pencil stuck in the end of it. One of our researchers located this film in the NASA files. We felt it was so real that it looked man-made. However, no one at NASA could tell us what it was.
The next series of films were collected from all over the world. All of them were taken by accident by people who were lucky enough to have a camera and be filming when a UFO made its appearance.
In the first film, if you look very carefully, you will see two speeding discs in the center of the screen. Next, if you look above the houses and mountains, you will see the familiar disc shape. Not all UFOs are saucer-shaped, as this film indicates. Taken over Alabama, this object seems to be emitting its own light source. This next film, taken from the window of an airplane, shows the cigar-shaped UFO. Let's take another look at this amazing film. Perhaps the best filmed evidence to date is this beautifully clear footage of a saucer-shaped UFO as it glides silently over mountaintops in the western United States. The proof is conclusive. UFOs are real, and they are not coming back in the year 2011 as many interpret from the ancient Peruvian gateway of the sun. They are here today. Many leading psychics predict that this will be the year the aliens reveal themselves to us.
There are living beings that come from other worlds. The short piece of film that you will see in a moment was smuggled from behind the Iron Curtain. But first, take a look at these incredible Polaroid photographs taken by Police Chief Jeffrey Greenshaw in Falkville, Alabama on October 17, 1973.
Many believe this to be a living creature, while others believe it to be a robot. The similarity in these snapshots and the film are uncanny. This astonishing film is believed to be a major breakthrough in proving at last that man is rapidly shrinking the secrets of the gods and will someday soon come face to face with his extraterrestrial destiny.
There's something out there. We know what we saw. We don't care what people think or their opinions. We're not interested.
We're here to consider all types of phenomena.
There's definitely some sort of unknown phenomena out there.
I wasn't the only one that saw this creature.
It's been in contact like for years.
Sort of like two bubbles put together and silverish gold, and it was between two jets.
Been in contact like for years.
And I looked up there and I noticed there was a bright shiny object that was moving irregularly in the sky. And so I looked at that and I got terribly glad with it, and I noticed that it was coming in toward our car. So I moved off the road. There wasn't anything on the road during that time of night except trucks. So I moved off the side of the road just to get a better look at it.
Why haven't the professionals, the scientists, and the journalists jumped on the pro-UFO bandwagon? And I give 4 reasons. The first one is this is wild speculation, but it is possible.
Now the thing moved closer and closer to the car. And it's interesting because it was very long and circular, and as it got closer, it became elongated.
I've had a couple of serious questions. I spoke to the ancestors' knowledge. One of the props there felt that UFOs were working with the devil.
It was more of a man that reacted more like any animal.
It looked like holes got a
Maybe the spaceships are coming here to find out from us what UFOs are.